I just thought of something. I've lost basically every video I've ever had, which means I have a clean slate. And so I'm going to talk about the walk I had this morning. So I was walking around and I'm trying to find a good location in the woods somewhere where I can take a picture for this stupid English project thing that I have to have like a basically a nature picture on because it's the House of the Spirits book. Anyway, so I was walking around in the woods and there's this puddle. Like, I'm walking around on this trail through the woods in the middle of the park, this big giant nature reserve place. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm walking around in the middle of the woods and there's a puddle in the middle of the path. And I'm like, okay, well, fine. So I took off my shoes and I took off my socks and I held them up and I just walked through because I'm wearing shorts anyway. So I'm walking through, it only gets up to like the middle of my shins. And then I'm walking and I'm walking and then I get to the next puddle. And I'm like, okay, so I guess I'll just leave my shoes off. So I keep walking and I'm walking and it starts to get deeper and it gets deeper. And I'm like, well, I already walked through one puddle. How many more puddles can there be? So it got deeper, and I just kept on walking, right? Like any normal, sane person would do. And so I'm walking, and I'm walking through, like, this, swamp. Like, before I know it, I'm up to my hips, like, in water. And then I look over, and I'm like, crap. I'm, like, almost in the middle of the river. But there's, like, a big empty space, and then a tree, and then river. Like, just all that way, and I'm like, oh, yeah, a little nutria, or whatever, these hippies call them, like a little mini beaver is, like, swimming by, like, 5 feet in front of me, and I'm like, oh, shit. So I just kept walking, and I kept walking, and I'm like, well, I can't turn back, I'm already probably halfway through. I wasn't even anywhere near halfway through, so I'm walking through this river. I realize I'm not even on a path anymore. I'm just, like, in the middle of a swamp, and I try to, get away from the river, because I don't want to be eaten by a shark or something. I don't even know what was going through my mind, so I'm going the other way, like, getting away from the river now, man. And so, I'm still walking. I'm, well, technically almost swimming, because it's gotten up to, like, my hips by now. And, of course, I've taken my phone out, and I stuck it in my bra, and I'm like, okay, fine, if it gets anywhere near close to my boobs, well, my phone, anyway, I'm going the opposite direction, which of course I never did. It just stayed like to my belly button. I'm like, okay, fine, I'm walking. Just gotta get through this, man. Just gotta get through this. Anyway, and I kept going, and all of a sudden I realized I'm not even on a trail anymore. Like, it started out like a puddle in the middle of a trail. I'm serious. It started out one little puddle like that deep, and it ended up me swimming in a swamp. And then I'm walking and I'm walking and I'm not even paying attention anymore because I'm just like, too focused on, okay, location scouting. And I'm walking and I turn around and I realize that I have no idea where I am. Like, there's water all the way back behind me and all the way forward, and I've got no idea where I am. I'm like in the middle of a swamp, basically. Like, up to my thighs in yuck. And it's not even water, it's like moldy, disgusting, it'll, in your toes kind of stuff. And I'm barefoot, keep in mind, I'm barefoot through this whole experience, walking around in a swamp, and I'm like, gosh, you guys are so crazy. So I kept walking still. I'm like, okay, well, I have to get through this freaking swamp. Once I get down to the other side, I forgot about this whole fact. I finally got to the other side. This old man, and like this little girl and this dog are at the other side of this big long trail, and because it goes in a loop, right? And on one side there's like this turf field, and the other side is like the river. I get to the other side, I loop around, and there's this old guy, and he's looking at me like, and rather than be like, oh my gosh, oh no, a woman from the sea, like I would have done, I'd be like, it's a mermaid. No, he grabs his kid and his dog, which is a big dog, mind you, picks them up and starts, like, beelining it. Well, more like just walking. This beelining is like a bee. No, he was like over to his car because I don't know. I think he thought it was crazy, and I kept walking, and I kept walking, and then a bunch of college students start laughing, and they're like, oh, what happened to you? And I'm like, heh. I just flipped off my wall, but, you guys could see it was in the shot. And I just kept on walking, and they're like, can we give you a ride home? And I'm like, dude, after what I've just been through, I'm pretty sure the next, mile and a half of this walk, it will be just fine. And I kept going, and I looked down. I didn't know what they were laughing about. I look down, and there is like a wrapper, a leaf, and what looked like, okay, the wrapper was a condom wrapper stuck to the back of my shin with mud and stuff. And all the while I'm just like, they're just laughing at me because I'm muddy and wet and disgusting and just came through a swamp. No, they're laughing at me because there is a condom wrapper stuck to the back of my leg that was somehow in that swamp, like, puke in my mouth when I finally figured that out, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So embarrassing. And so I just kept on walking until I got home, and I was about to, like, walk through the front door, and I'm like, okay, unrolling my pants. Well, no, I sprinted home, actually, and until I got to the front door, and I unrolled my pants, and I realized the wrapper's there, and a leaf, and, a twig, and, a full sample of everything else in that forest. And, yeah, so that's the story of my walk this morning, just so you all know.